So if you are a resident and you find yourself in an emergency situation in the Southern California area, how is the best way to handle it and how do you deal with it? I'm Steve Rosenberg with Mind Property Management. Today I'm joined with Kyle Stevens, who is our portfolio manager for Mind Property Management. Kyle, thank you for joining me today.
Of course, Steve, thank you for having me.
So Kyle, if you were talking to a resident of Mind or just a resident in general, what are some things that they should really be thinking about when it comes to dealing with an emergency situation?
Sure. So I think first and foremost, Steve, it's definitely critical to understand what you would classify as an emergency. As we know, there are several different types of emergencies, but most importantly and most common would be a maintenance emergency. So that being said, anything that would, damage the structural integrity of a home, whether that's from the interior or exterior part of the home, that could include water, fire, you name it, multiple other elements that could damage the home. I think anything that kind of falls in that category would be something that would be classified as an emergency. So any leak, uncontrolled fire, things of that nature would not be classified as an emergency. Would be something as simple as, replacing a light bulb, or if your towel rack might have fallen off the wall, or something that, is a little bit more easy to repair versus an actual real emergency.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Understanding the definition of one is important. So let's just say it really is an emergency and, the house is flooding or the house is on fire or something like that. How do you recommend dealing with that kind of situation?
Sure. So I think it's very important to understand who you would actually need to reach out given that type of emergency that you found yourself in. If it is a fire, for example, you definitely want to call 911, call the fire department, get somebody out to extinguish the flame. If it is a leak, I'm not sure if you might have seen any sort of tutorial on how to control leaks or shut off valves, but if not, you can always call your property manager in that situation. It kind of depends. You just want to be knowledgeable and aware of who to reach out to given that scenario that you found yourself in.
Yeah, that's great. And, other things to think about if you are a resident in a multifamily property, how to exit the unit. But if you are living there and there is a fire, know where your fire extinguishers are. Know where your smoke detectors are. Make sure your smoke detectors are up to date. So these are some preemptive things that you want to do. You don't want to be looking for a fire extinguisher in the middle of a fire and not know where it is, or know if it's actually charged and usable. Again, that is not the time to do that. So again, these are some things that you can do on a periodic basis to make sure that the safety and security for you and for your family and anyone living in the property is safe and secure. Any other things that you can think of, like phone numbers they should know or anything like that, Kyle?
Definitely. So again, it also depends on the emergency that you found yourself in, but given the nature of it, it's important to know and keep up to date with the CDC guidelines on certain situations related to health emergencies. You want to have a contact number for somebody on file. That being said, also your nearest hospital, maybe have a contact for them as well, or someone to reach out to given, an emergency that you might need to have a hospital contact on hand for. Even like a poison control center, or there's many different emergencies that can come up, like I've stated, but it's always important to have some sort of contact prepared for each one just to be sure that you're safe and you know who to reach out to given that situation that arises.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And also, again, remember, understanding all documentation, I think that's important from all levels, whether it's your driver's license, a passport, social security card, renter's insurance. If you have renter's insurance, these are things that you want to make sure that you have, and you may not be able to get back into the property, which is why it makes sense to be able to scan and save to a cloud-based system so that you can get to it in the event of an emergency. Bank account information. These are things we don't normally think about, but are vital when it comes to dealing with an emergency, because you're going to need that information to start some conversations. And if it's gone in a fire or flood or something, you may not be able to get to it. And, that, again, these are the things that are preemptively you want to make sure that you could do. And again, these are just good to know tips. Obviously, Southern California, we don't get many snowstorms, but we do get earthquakes. And the challenge with an earthquake is we don't know when it's going to come. So when there is an earthquake that happens, it happens, and then maybe you can't even get down the street to the property, or a fire. If you're in an area that has a lot of brush and brush fires, you can't get back to the property. So you may be out of your property for a while. And this is why you want to have access, credit cards, all that information somewhere safe that you can always access it.
Sure.
Did I miss anything, Kyle, that you could think of? I think that covers most of it, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I think we hit a lot of the fine-tuned details of basically who to call and what to do in each situation. But it's all about just being proactive. I mean, you need to understand like who your contacts are for different situations. Along with basically a lot of different situations in life, but specifically if you are, a resident facing one of these situations, you just want to be proactive. You want to be prepared. You want to know what to do if something were to come up, prepare for the unexpected, as a lot of people like to say. So I think we touched on a lot of good stuff, and that's basically all I got here.
Yeah, and I think lastly, I would say make sure you're communicating with everybody. That I think is very important. You got to communicate with the owner, with the other residents. As many people that you can over communicate with is really key in these types of stressful situations, because nobody knows what you're thinking unless you let them know. And that's what I think is very important to know. And that's what I'll finish with. So if you want to know more, you can go to our website, mynd.co, mynd.co. And we have a knowledge center where you can see a lot of information to help residents with things such as what we just talked about here. On behalf of Kyle, myself, and Mynd Property Management, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to keep the conversation going, join our Facebook group.